1017 FM and 710 Keel. Robert J. Wright and Aaron McCarty, all guests on Keel, heard all the time via the Jack Spring Electric Keel Newsmaker Hotline. Mr. James Carter, Cochran Law Firm in New Orleans, the family attorney for Tommy McGlothen, the late Tommy McGlothen's family. Mr. Carter, thank you for joining us this morning. First of all, just fill us in the latest developments, lawsuits, etc.
Yes, we filed a federal lawsuit in the Western District of Louisiana. Unfortunately, we had to file to protect the rights of Tommy McGlothen, who was brutally beaten and left to die in Shreveport last year. And so we are in this journey to justice, seeking to redress the situation with the tragic loss of my client. It's been horrible for the family. In fact, his wife has since passed since then. And one of the things that has been articulated relative to his wife's passing, she died grieving of the loss of her husband. And we are saddened that it had to come to this. We priorly sent out a demand to the city in an attempt to settle this matter amicably under the circumstance. They did not respond. And now, unlike other jurisdictions in this country, such as in the Breonna Taylor situation, where there was a $12 million settlement pre-indictment, where there was a $20 million settlement in the William Green case in Prince George's County, Maryland, in January of 2020, and now the George Floyd $27 million settlement. Shreveport has forced us to go forward with this lawsuit, and we intend to take this matter to the very end.
Mr. James, just to set the record straight, I think it was September? I think you had requested a $25 million settlement from the city, and you say that they did not respond at all. Give us details.
They didn't respond at all. They did not respond at all. No formal response whatsoever. And that was actually October the 26th, 2020, when we sent that demand in.
Your lawsuit names Shreveport Police Chief Ben Raymond and 4 of the officers involved. Why the chief? Why just 4 of the officers?
Well, there were 4 officers who were indicted. The chief of police is responsible for their proper training, supervision, and oversight. And so we filed a lawsuit relative to the 4 officers who were indicted. One, those officers were indicted on negligent homicide, each one of them, as well as malfeasance in office. And 2, Ben Raymond, the police chief, is responsible for their training, oversight, et cetera, or lack of training there is. And so therefore, we filed a lawsuit against him. We also filed a lawsuit against the city of Shreveport as well as its insurance carrier.
The family wants justice in this case. Obviously, the officers to continue to face charges and, face the consequences. The lawsuit seeks damages, but it's in a federal court. Explain why the federal court, if you can.
These civil rights cases like this, these police brutality and misconduct cases, are cases that speaks of federal actions, specifically 42 U.S.C. 1983, as well as various constitutional federal issues. And therefore, the federal court is the proper venue to bring such an action. Is a proper venue to bring such an action.
Let me ask you this, too. I checked today, and it appears that the 4 officers were placed on administrative leave. Do you know any more about that? I mean, are we still paying them while they're on leave? Can you give us an update on those 4 officers?
I'm not aware of the pay status or not of them. That's my understanding also, which is also pretty ridiculous under the circumstance. If they are getting paid, that would be another human travesty to not only the family, but to the citizens of Shreveport.
The family wants justice in this case. God, I hate to ask you, what would be justice for them?
Well, first of all, the loss of a loved one, a dad, a husband, a son, a brother, and a friend to many, it's hard to talk about justice in a situation like that. What is justice in a situation like that? What I can tell you is that our American judicial system speaks to monetary compensation in situations like this as a way to attempt to get justice in these situations. So from the civil side, we bring civil actions to get a monetary to obtain a monetary award, relative to matters like this. But this word justice, it's hard to to say justice can ever be gotten in the truest sense in terms of the loss of a life. But our system applies monetary compensation, and we're going to seek the maximum under the circumstances.
Mr. James, to use your terms, $25 million, I guess, last year was your attempt at justice. Is that number still the number? Would you be willing to settle? Where do you stand right now as far as any response? What response you might get from the city?
Well, we have not made a determination past our settlement offer at that time, a settlement demand at that time. We are willing to continue to listen to what the city has to say relative to our demand. However, we are now prepared to go all the way through trial on the matter.
James Carter, attorney for the Cochran Law Firm. Let's go one more time. For people who are not familiar with the Tommy McGlothen case, describe the circumstances surrounding his death and why you think Shreveport Police and the police chief should be held responsible. The
police department of Shreveport was called out to address an episode by which my client had mentally disabled. He was a schizophrenic, which they were aware of. The Shreveport Police Department on prior occasions were called out to deal with matters associated with Mr. McGlothen. On the day in question, they had 2 encounters with Mr. McGlothen observing his behavior. Instead of the police department treating him as such, they brutally engaged him on the 3rd encounter, beating him brutally and savagely. Several officers, including the officers who were named in this particular complaint that we filed today. And then further, instead of giving him the proper medical treatment that he deserved once they beat him like they did, they allowed him to stay in a patrol car and die out over a 48-minute time period. So they failed in terms of the encounter. They failed in terms of providing treatment, negligently, ultimately causing Mr. McGlothen to expire. And so therefore we find ourselves in the situations we're in today. And a grand jury in Cato Parish rightfully proved the charges of negligent homicide as well as malfeasance in office for all 4 officers who were involved. And therefore, that brings us collectively to where we are today, and that's the filing of this lawsuit after, in October of last year, we sent a settlement demand to the city of Shreveport, which they totally ignored. And so under the laws of the state of Louisiana and federal court, under these circumstances, we had until 1 year from the time of the accident and or the negligent activities of the parties involved to the negligent homicide of the parties involved to file an action to seek redress on the matter.
James Carter, Cochran Law Firm. Thanks for your time, sir.
Appreciate it. I'm sure we'll be talking again. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.